Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Monday evening live stream with me, Charlie Landon. This is Moving Home with Charlie, and this evening we're going to go through today's Rightmove monthly asking price index. I choose my words carefully there. I want to talk a little bit about the budget and why I wouldn't wait, especially if I'm selling something above $500,000. And I'm also going to explain why I think that the most interesting things happening in terms of house prices are being muted by the concept of a national average. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean in a minute. But I would start, before we get into it, by saying this. I'm very serious about this. Reports from across the industry are saying that, especially at above the £500,000 level and very much above the £1 million level, everything's slowing down. Now, that's not my experience with the agents that I work with, where the stuff's priced well, it's still selling, things are still going through. But in the normal markets where stuff is overvalued, it's really slowing down. And a lot of people are waiting to see what the budget measures are going to be before they decide what to do. I could be wrong. This is nothing more than a gut feel, plus a little bit of analysis on how Rachel Reeves thinks and this government is working. And let's put it this way. I don't think they're going to make it any easier to sell an expensive house. Okay? I'm almost sure that anything and everything they do is going to make it harder to sell a house above £500,000 or £1 million. And one of the reports that's been coming in is that actually there's been less property coming onto the market since the budget date was announced. And for those people who are waiting because they want to sell the house, but they don't think now's a good time, so they're going to wait until it is a good time, I think that the odds are you're going to wish you hadn't waited. I'm saying this regularly because I know what's going to happen. Usually when I issue these opinions, not a prediction, an opinion, a guess on what's going to happen. I could be wrong. Normally, most of you don't take heed and you think it doesn't apply to you. But I have been saying for years, for 3 years at least, if you're a seller or a downsizer, don't delay. And that was definitely, with hindsight, good advice. And it's the same now, but I'm just cranking up the intensity of that suggestion, something that you should consider. Why are you waiting for the budget before you decide to sell your house? Do you think it's going to be easier to sell your house after the budget? It's not going to be easier. It's not going to be easier. Okay, let's get into the Rightmove stuff. I honestly, there's this phenomenon that happens with my followers, and I know this because sometimes, especially those of you that book calls with me, I have calls with you and you say, oh, thanks, I've been watching your channel for a couple of years. And then you talk to me either as though you haven't been watching my channel for a long time, or as though you genuinely don't think that my advice applies to you. And that's a genuinely frequent occurrence, where I'm asked questions by both buyers and sellers going, well, I've heard you say that, but I was just wondering whether it applied to my situation. And my first thought when people say that to me, and if you're thinking this, if you're watching this thinking, oh, I hear all Charlie's advice, I don't think it applies to us. Why don't you think it applies to you? The number of people who pay for my time to ask me questions about their situation, where the answer is just, I mean, literally all of the stuff in my videos answers all of your questions. And whatever that phenomenon is, whatever causes people to think that doesn't apply to me, my situation is different. That's what's causing the most people to get caught out. Anyway, so today, Monday the 20th of October, hot off the press, Rightmove's house price index. Now, it shouldn't be called a house price index. It should be called an asking price index, because house price index implies transaction prices, but there is nothing contained in Rightmove's asking price index that has any relation whatsoever to transaction prices. Nothing. Rightmove's monthly asking price index is made up solely of newly listed properties that have come to the market in the last 28 days. They actually specify the dates. And it excludes any price reductions that happens to those ones in the first couple of weeks or in the first 4 weeks. They don't include the price reductions. They just record the initial launching price. And they ignore the rest of the market and what's happening with that. So with that in mind, I also want to give you another caveat, right? Because people go, but Charlie, why do you use Rightmove thing? You say you can't trust it. No. The thing about Rightmove's data is that it actually, if you bother to stop and look at what they actually say, I don't have any reason to doubt the numbers they're putting out here. But my point is that people don't interpret them correctly and think, oh, it means all transaction prices are doing what Rightmove says. And that's not what they're saying at all. You have to look beyond the headline. House price index, misleading. Asking price index, which bears no relation to actual prices. Proof, I think Nationwide's average UK house price right now is 271,000. And Rightmove's is 371,000, exactly £100,000 more than the ONS, Nationwide, and Zoopla, all of whom are in the same ballpark, around about 270,000. Rightmove's, no, 370,000. And people wonder why sellers have warped expectations. The largest monthly sample of residential property prices. No, that's not true anymore, actually. No. Best Agents is the largest. My website is the largest, but never mind, we'll have that fight later. And housing market activity, no, it doesn't really cover that either. You don't report on any of the activity, Rightmove, very much, do you? You just talk about your asking prices. So normally in October, when they report October's house price index, they report that for the last 10 years, the average jump in the average asking price is 1.1% up over the previous month. And this month, it's only 0.3% up. And so you've seen headlines today going, oh, a smaller bounce than usual. But none of the headlines, and it's weird, isn't it? Isn't it weird? None of the headlines covered the fact that the year-on-year prices, which when prices are going up and starting to come down, they always say, oh, prices went up X% in the last year, but they ignore that the monthly is down. Well, they're reversing it here now. They're ignoring the year-on-year, which is down, and saying, oh, look, the monthly is up. The monthly changes in Rightmove's prices are frankly fairly irrelevant because, as I will show you in a minute, they go up, down, up, down, up, down, but all over the place for the year. But actually, over the 12 months, the total change is minus 0.1%. About 300 quid, right? But I think that masks something else that's going on here. That groups together all types of properties throughout the UK. First-time buyer properties, second step of properties, and top of the ladder properties. And I think, and in fact, Zoopla's index shows this, that those three market segments are all doing very different things. Then you've got them doing different things between the north and the south. Then you've got them doing different things at different price ranges. But right here, average asking prices are slightly below this time last year. That is a misleading number for you as an individual considering your move, because it does not mean that all prices in the UK have only moved slightly down by 300 quid. Doesn't mean that at all. And actually, as we'll see as I scroll down the page here, you'll see that they break it down and there are quite big differences. But this is what I think is happening. Rightmove doesn't divulge the number of listings in each property segment, first time buyer, second stepper, top of the ladder. It doesn't divulge those, I don't think. And I think that what's actually happening is there are larger numbers of properties coming onto the market at the higher prices and not selling. And those prices are down significantly. And that's distorting this. And overall, the larger number of higher value properties coming to the market is keeping the overall average higher than it would be if they weren't coming on so much. But that is a baseless assumption. I have no evidence for that. That's just my gut feel. What's up 5% is number of sales agreed in the year to date. Okay, so that's 2025 to date. The number of agreed sales, but this excludes fall throughs, which are also up on last year. So again, slightly misleading. Okay, that is the number of agreed sales up. Okay, so let's just run through what they say. The market remains resilient. Now, I think, you know how they use the word buoyant sometimes? Buoyant is one step up from resilient. Resilient implies that the market is having to withstand something. So it's implying that there are difficult conditions. Right. We can ignore the first line there, except that there we are, the 10-year average October bounce of 1.1%, and it's only 0.3%. The month of September saw, here's another one of my favorite words they use, a softening of activity. Softening. Unlike when it hardened. You know when activity hardens, and you hear them talking all the time about how activity hardens when... But no, it's softening now. Activity is softening. Activity is getting softer, not harder. They never talk about it getting harder. They only talk about it getting softer rather than getting lower, right? They'll use any word other than down or weaker. They'll get softening. But yes, the activity was lower, not softer. You can't measure softness and hardness. Please don't use those words. Because last year in September, they had the first bank rate cut for 4 years. However, the 2025 market remains resilient. Well, how can it be resilient and soft? I'd say if it was resilient, it means it's hard, wouldn't you? Though somewhat cautious when looking at the year to date. The number of new buyers contacting agents about homes for sale and the number of new sellers coming to the market are both down 5% compared to a year ago. That's the whole year to date. That's not October. That is the cumulative year to date. And I think that conceals a much larger drop It's this is conflicting wording. There it says year to date, and here it says the full month of September. So which one is it? Oh, year to date new buyer demand is up 2%. Okay. number of new sellers coming to the market is up by 5%. All right, so number of new sellers is going up faster than number of new buyers. Okay. Sales agreed, we've covered. The annual price dip continues. Oh, that's how they're covering the year-on-year price fall. An annual price dip doesn't sound as bad as a year-on-year price fall. I'm surprised they didn't say an annual price, a softening of the annual price. With falls in London and the south of England dragging down the overall national average to 0.1%. However, Scotland, Wales, and the rest of England have all seen annual asking prices rise of at least 1%. Okay. Southern England is being particularly affected by a combination of increased stamp duty and high buyer choice, fewer international buyers, and some budget jitters. Okay. Rightmove strongly supports new policy proposals which would increase mobility and improve the buying and selling process. Okay, let's not get into that now, otherwise I'll get distracted. So look, last month, the national average asking price of everything that came to the market in 28 days was £370,000. This month, it's £371,000. They've missed out their titles this year. That's monthly, and then that's yearly. So it's again, year on year, the national average is slightly down. However, come down below and you get a different picture. And this is where I question their numbers, because how can then year on year be down when all three of these year on year segments are up? It's just a bit weird. But this is the point that I think is the most important point out of everything in this month's Rightmove asking price index. First time buyer prices in a month when normally those prices will bump up are actually down month on month. Second stepper prices, which has been the strongest performing segment, are down 0.3%. These are small. This is not a big deal. I just find it interesting that at the lower end of the market, asking prices are actually lower month on month, but at the top of the ladder, where prices are struggling the most and where overvaluing is happening and where prices are falling the most, they've seen the biggest change in national average asking price from 669 to 676,000. Now, that can be one of two reasons. Okay, so they're not, when they take everything that came on the market in September, it's a different sample of houses that come to the market in October. And it doesn't mean necessarily that it's exactly the same profile of properties, they've just chosen to put their price up. It means that there are more properties with a higher price coming to the market. Okay, this does not mean prices are going up, but of course, some people will interpret this as, oh, look, prices at the top of the market are getting higher. That's not, no, it doesn't mean that. So here you are, 133,000 asking prices this month nationally, put on sale between the 7th of September and the 11th of October. Okay, so that's slightly more than 4 weeks this time. Right. Do we have... Brit in Switzerland referring to whether activity is hardening or softening. Turgid and flaccid? Yeah, I mean, there's no reason. They would be equally valid words to use to describe what's happening. Or the English Voices says soft, strong, and very long. Okay. Hi, guys. Just looking in the comments here. Hello, everybody. Right. Let's keep going. And then we're going to look at some of the budget measures. I'm not going to go through all this stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Everything's fine. Blah, blah, blah. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, it's encouraging. I've met Colleen. She's lovely. She's a wonderful person. And I haven't seen her since her name has started appearing in the Rightmove asking price index. But I'd love to chat with her about it some more. Let's keep going. More experts' views. I don't think the public trusts property experts very much. It's one of the reasons why I've always said that I'm not a property expert. Okay, that's a fairly useless line. This is the graph I was referring to earlier. I wanted to show you, because what you'll see here is the monthly changes in average asking price. And it swings between minus 1.7% and plus 1.7%. Up, down, down, up, 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 down, 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 up, up. But overall, it's flat. It's zero. But what this does is create great PR for Rightmove, right? The bigger the number, up or down, the more headlines they get. And I thought it was very interesting today that there were very, very few headlines talking about this. It's like, if the papers don't hear record house prices or record house price falls, they just don't write about it. So, yeah. Oh, whoops. I better put this back on the screen. Yeah, so again, don't read too much into the monthly movements, okay? What is more interesting is to compare them with the average of the last 10 years. So I think it is a relevant comparison to go. Normally, October is up 1.1%. That's the average of the last 10 years. This year, only up 0.3%. I mean, that's another utterly useless graph, I think. So no value to anybody. That's really not much help either. Neither is that one. Neither is that one, because they're all averages. Regional trends. Again, this is where I love this is the color coding here, where when the month-on-month changes down, they put it in red on the number, but they don't put it in red on the map. They put it in light green on the map. They don't want red on the map. And guys, don't read too much. Again, don't read too much into these. They just want you. It's just all about pumping the Rightmove name. And I know that I'm doing that when I talk about their index, but because it's such a widely used index, it needs debunking or explaining more clearly and more often. I thought this was interesting. So the average monthly amount spent on a first-time buyer home, whether you're renting or mortgage payment. And it's important to remember who Rightmove's paying customers are. First and foremost, they are estate agents. And estate agents love to overvalue stuff. So they love the Rightmove Index because it's really, really toppy and frothy and gets it real. And they use it to back up their overvaluing. Rightmove is the most useful tool when it comes to supporting agents over-optimistic overvaluations. We can get, how much would you like for your house, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? More? Like some more? Higher? More? Well, I mean, with Rightmove, we can go as high as you like with an asking price. But this endless comparison between rent and mortgage payment misses the very important factor that when you're paying rent for a home, the amount you pay in rent is the maximum you will pay to occupy that home, right? Plus your bills. You were never going to pay more to live in that home than your rent. But with your mortgage payment, that is the minimum you will pay to live in your home, okay? Because there will be maintenance. So much maintenance, and just costs that you won't have budgeted for. And those are never factored in. So when naive first-time buyers go, well, look, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent. No, no, it's not a good assumption. A safe assumption, and of course it varies wildly depending on the state of the property that you're buying. A safe budget is 1% of the property's value per year towards maintenance. Some years it'll reach that. That'll be a bad year, maybe even more than that. Other years it'll be less. It's rarely less than 0.5%. And weirdly, the bigger the home, the bigger that budget should be. Right? You've got plumbing things, tenants never have to pay the plumber, right? Think about it. Homeowners are paying plumbers all the time. Just before you get the plumbing, electrical, never mind roof repairs, damp, never mind any of that stuff, right? So just never ever, when you hear people who are selling mortgages and promoting high house prices saying, oh, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent, you can go, no, that's bullshit. The mortgage payment may be lower than the rent payment, but that is only one part of the cost of owning a home. So please take your it's cheaper to buy than rent and stick it where the sun don't shine. That was that comment. Next graph I wanted to talk about. I wish Alex was here for this one. Ability to afford a first-time buyer home. Those three lines, the middle line is the average asking price for a first-time buyer home. The yellow line, right? Average asking price for a first-time buyer home. The light green line is one person's salary times 4.5, and the dark green home is two people's 4.5 times salary, 4.5 times two people's salary. So you really, you're not going to be able to buy a home on your own unless you're earning way, way, way above median salary. But if there are two of you, then it shouldn't be too difficult. However, the trouble is, it does mean that both of you have got to work, and that has all kinds of other implications on life, like not having time or space or money to have children, etc. Okay, now this is the only other thing I want to talk about. London prices overall, with variations, are generally sliding. And what I looked at here, this is the London prices broken down by borough. The monthly change is pointless to look at because it fluctuates all over. It's such a small sample size. It's so spiky and noisy that you can't really read anything into it. And sometimes the actual transaction volumes are tiny as well. But an annual change is more interesting. And the biggest year-on-year change in house prices in London Borough is Brent at 3.8%. Remember, that's an average of the whole borough of all different property types, but you break down flats, semis, and terraced and detached houses, and they'll all be doing different things from that. But the highest of the increases is 3.8%. And then you scroll down, and quite quickly it gets down towards zero. And then we get into the negative, and it's a much longer list of boroughs going negative, and they go way beyond 3.8%, 4.9%, minus 6.5%, and minus 9.9% in 1 year in Westminster. And that's the average. That is the average. So that's down from 100. So that's 100 grand down in a year, the average in Westminster. But again, if you actually go into Westminster and you start to look at flats versus houses and that kind of stuff, the numbers get much more wild. London's having a shocker at the moment, generally speaking, on prices. You can sell a house in London very quickly if you price it right. But I think that the unrealistic price expectations are worst at the top of the market. That's what I think. Okay, so I think we're wrapping up on, and then at the very bottom it talks about the index a bit. Okay. So do we have any questions about Rightmove's index? Any questions? Let's just put that back to the top. And leave that there for a second. Any questions about that? Let's have a quick look. You guys are all just basically chatting amongst yourselves and ignoring me, aren't you? I feel like a teacher in front of a class and no one's paying attention. You know what else this budget is doing? The budget is distracting from something equally, if not even bigger, that's happening, which is the Renters' Rights Bill. And it hasn't had much coverage in the press, but just a week or two ago, the Renters' Rights Bill passed its final hurdle in Parliament. That's it. No more negotiating, no more arguing. It's going to be made law. It's just waiting for royal assent, and it's going to be made law at some point next year. And the Renters' Rights Bill, there was an article about it on Bloomberg today, it's the biggest set of changes to the rental market in decades. And no matter how well-intentioned they might have been, It's being poorly executed, and it's going to cause real problems, and it's going to hurt the people it's intended to help. And it's going to cause massive disruption. And really, there are going to be no winners from this. And my frustration is that it wouldn't have been necessary if the government had, if previous governments, all governments, in fact, going back a long way, had simply chosen to enforce existing legislation. That's all it would have taken. Okay. But the trouble is, enforcing existing legislation doesn't create work for the bureaucrats. And the bureaucrats like to create work for themselves. Otherwise, what are they going to do? And so they just come up with ideas for more legislation and more legislation and more legislation, and they keep piling more and more and more on top, on top, on top. It's going to be awful. And that's going to be coming in 2026, right around the time that these budget measures that might be coming in are going to happen. So 2026 has got whatever the budget measures are going to be, because a lot of them will be announced in November, but then probably come into effect in April 2026. Some of them will. Some will be earlier, maybe. Then we're going to have the Renters' Rights Bill coming into effect sometime in 2026. Can you see why I'm saying if you need to sell, I would not be waiting. I wouldn't be waiting. I'd be selling as quickly as I could. I don't just mean downsizing. I mean upsizing or downsizing. I just think moving is going to get harder, not easier. I think there's going to be, I think before we even start talking about what's happening in the economy and the jobs market and what that's going to do, I think old Freddie, what's his name? Fred Diddley, can't remember his surname. Fred Harrison, who has confidently predicted a house price crash in 2026 for a long time ago because it's 18 years. And he recently doubled down and said yes. I mean, you can see why it could happen. But as well as the economy, as well as all this legislation, as well as all these tax changes, we've also got some real creaking and groaning in the credit system. And for those of you paying attention, you will have seen that overnight bank rates, like the liquidity rates, have done a little bit of spiky stuff recently. And there was a small regional bank in America that went pop last week. And then BNP Paribas had shares, trading in shares suspended this morning. And then dropped about 10%. But that was because they were busted for basically bankrolling terrorists in Sudan or something like that. And so you add all these things together, right? All this legislation, downward pressure on landlords, making them sell up. And my God, if you're a landlord, if you are a landlord now, and actually one of you contacted me recently, one of my followers, big following of their own, is a landlord, has a portfolio of 3 properties, and contacted me and said, what would I do? And I said, I would either be doubling down on being in the business of being a landlord, professionalizing it and running it as a full-time business and growing my portfolio, because it's cheap to buy flats now, right? If you've got cash, it's cheap to buy flats, and I'd be growing my portfolio and running it really well as a business. Either I'd be doing that or I'd be out. Okay. What I would not be doing is just having 1 or 2 or 3 properties that, kind of take care of themselves, and there's an agent looking after them, and every now and then I have to go and change a boiler or something. The nice, low maintenance landlording that's been happening since buy-to-let mortgages were invented back in the 90s by the Labour government. Honestly, guys, the amount of, let's call them Labour supporters, who think the Tories are to blame for the state of the housing market. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Tories have done nothing to help it, and they made it worse with Help to Buy. But buy-to-let lending was a brainchild of the last Labour government. And that's done. That honestly was one of the worst price pumping things that they could have done. It took salary multiples from 4.5 up to 7.5 times. So yeah, I'd be getting out. I had a landlord message me the other day saying, I saw you saying, you think landlords should sell up now. Oh, really? I'm quite happy. Got a good tenant. It's all looking fine. I mean, if the Renters' Rights Bill doing wrong, should be fine. So many landlords like that are going to get caught out. You're going to get caught out. Agents are going to get caught out. Even tenants are going to get caught out. This is what I mean about it being badly thought through. There are tenants who didn't ask for this, who were perfectly happy with the current system, who are suddenly going to find themselves going, hang on a second, what do you mean I can't do that? What do you mean I can't secure my home for another year if I want to? Why can't I do that? Oh, because the government wants to protect tenants. I don't need protecting. I just want to be able to secure my. It's been so badly thought through. And you know what? It's going to be the fault of landlords for not regulating themselves well enough to get rid of the bad landlords. Basically, the landlords who are doing okay and doing well got complacent about the bad landlords and didn't realize that the minority of bad landlords was going to cause this to happen, right? They're tarring you all with the same brush. One silly boy in the class at the back misbehaves, whole class gets punished. That's what's happening. Okay, budget. So these are the mooted possible changes happening in the budget. And that's a lot of things that could happen. Got no idea which ones are or which ones aren't going to happen. They're probably all going to happen to some extent or another, but they're going to be different pricing bands. It's going to cause total chaos and confusion to begin with. It won't have been thought through properly by people with their feet grounded in the real world. It will have been thought through by academics. I have lots of friends who are academics and I love them, but you shouldn't let them anywhere near government policy because it's the real world and it affects people's real lives when you implement policy and mess it up. Okay. And it's going to cause chaos. Hey, I really hope I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong about this, you can say, Charlie, you doom monger, you panicky doom monger. There was nothing to worry about at all. It was absolutely fine. Let's hope. I don't think so, right? I mean, there are going to be, depending on what happens, there are going to be some people rushing to get stuff done before April. There are going to be other people who don't want to do anything before April. And it's going to create an artificial set of timelines that are going to twist and distort the housing market up until April, and then it's going to go dead. Like it did this year when they were raising stamp duty thresholds, or lowering thresholds, raising stamp duty, and there was an artificial rush in March, and then it dropped off in April. That is a lot of big things, right? Capital gains tax on primary residences. I don't think they're going to do that. I'm just going to make some guesses here. I don't think they're going to do that on all primary residences. I think they'll do it on, if they do it, they'll do it on primary residences above a certain value, which should put a downward value on more expensive properties. If it happens, it'll put downward pressure on prices. One of the reasons why I'd be selling sooner rather than later. New tax on sales of high value homes. That's going to be, I think, increased stamp duty or something similar up there. Reform or replacement of stamp duty on lower properties. Yeah, I think the government is going to do something about stamp duty on lower properties. That's good. That's welcome. But I think they're going to do it as a sweetener before they do the next one on the list. Council tax overhaul. We're going to get rid of stamp duty below a certain amount of money. But your council tax is going to go up. Sorry. And what they're going to do because it makes them more money. National insurance on rental income will be forcing more landlords to sell up because it will make renting unviable for yet more landlords. And that will put rents up. Not because landlords go, hey, I'm putting my rent up to cover the national insurance. No, it'll be because more landlords will be selling up. Some of the ones that are selling up won't go to other landlords. Some of them will. And the ones that don't means that the available rental stock will continue to dwindle, and that will continue to put rents up. And in some places, not all, rents are coming down in some places, but it will put them up where it hurts most. And it will also continue to push homelessness up. Inheritance tax reforms, well, I mean, again, I don't know what they're going to do there, but whatever they do will create some kind of rush or other or not. And a broader wealth tax, including, who knows? Who knows? Right, guys, do we have questions? Because if not, I'm going to wrap it up early. Do you have questions? Anything at all? No, you're all just talking to each other and ignoring me. That's fine. I don't mind being background noise if that's what makes you happy. Okay, Payne and Son says, this is a really important point. There's a lot of hate for the boomers out there, and I think it's misplaced. Because all humans would do the same given the same government policy, right? When the baby boomers bought their cheap properties back in the day, it didn't feel cheap back then. I promise you. I know that compared to salaries and stuff it was, but it didn't feel it. It was just a different time. Everything was very different, okay? And secondly, it was government policy. People did what anyone would do, and we would have done if we were boomers. Now, the amount of bad baby boomer single property landlords is high. They mostly cause this. Many are now. This is not true. It's the buy-to-let mortgage boom is what caused this. And yes, a lot of them, there were lots of boomers did it as well, but there are also lots of teenagers that did it. Okay, anyone did it. Get rich quick. It was buy-to-let boom, get rich quick, cash in on tenants. Let's have a field day. And you know what? As I've said all along, if you make your tenant's life a better thing by being a good landlord and giving them a home that they like at a rent that they are happy paying, you are making contribution. I know there are people who disagree with it. Oh no, it's rentier, it's rent seeking, yada, yada, yada. It's market, it's supply meeting the demand. There was demand for rent, right? And in any market where there's a demand, somebody will come along and meet it with supply. That's what markets do, right? People want to rent. Even people who can afford to buy often want to rent. I don't blame the boomers. I don't blame the boomers. Yeah, exactly. The English Voice says, yep, so that shafts tenants who won't benefit from stamp duty abolition. That's correct. Except the ones that are then going to buy, they'll benefit from it. What? Hang on, I'm going to come to that comment in a minute. Bozbos47 says, the abolition of private property is upon us. You will own nothing and feel crappy. I'm not answering the question, where do babies come from? Very funny. God, Nick Jones. But don't house prices always go up? It's really funny. There's an article came out in the Financial Times, I think on Friday or Saturday, criticizing sellers for being unrealistic. I thought, what's happened? The world's turned upside down. Financial Times, one of the biggest price pumping papers of them all, is suddenly shaming sellers for having too high asking prices. That's a good question, Bertie43. I'll come to that in just a second. Yeah. Naida says, I remember when my parents paid £27,000 in Berkshire. That was a lot of money then. Yep. Yeah. The banksters caused this, not your neighbours. I agree with that. WF451 says, buy to let, every man and his dog was at it. That's true. And it did ruin it. And what they should have done, the mistake that they made, was not insisting on much tighter controls on the quality of properties and the landlord's treatment of tenants. And if they put tighter controls in, it would have been okay. It would have been better. Because you wouldn't have had so many of the outright shyster landlords who just want to juice tenants. There wouldn't have been so many, and the prices wouldn't have gone up so much. I'll come to that, Victoria Hamilton. That's unbelievable. Ditch head, good point. Come to that. Lemon and sugar, Glenn Watson, is my favourite pancake topping. Although I don't eat sugar anymore. I'm proper sugar addict, but I've been 2 weeks without any sugar so far. Right. Okay, let's take some of these questions. And let's just stop showing that. Dent Diz, I think you're referring to the Renters' Rights Bill, saying rents will probably be higher, but more fair. In what way are higher rents more fair? More security for tenants, potentially, but actually also not. Because there are tenants who will want to secure their tenancies for longer, and the landlords previously would have been able to agree with that, but they're no longer going to be allowed to do that. I reckon that actually the Renters' Rights Bill could well create a black market for renting. I don't think higher rents is more fair, Dentists. I think higher rents just hurts the economy and people's pockets even more. Bertie43 says, do you think commuter belt is relatively safe from property drops? Not any longer. No, I don't, is my nutshell answer to that. For two reasons. First of all, because people are commuting far fewer days per week than they used to, those commuter belts that were absolutely in like ideal commuting distance of London are no longer quite so important. Secondly, remote working means people are actually scattering all around the country now, and that's one of the reasons that London prices have been coming down, because people can go and live and work anywhere else now. So I think the commuter belt is no longer the thing that it once was. Victoria Hamilton says, I'm renting still. Landlord announced a 10% increase with 2 weeks' notice. I don't think they're not allowed to do that, are they? 2 weeks notice. I should know that off the top of my head, and I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm pretty certain that they can't do that. Did they do it properly, Victoria? Did they actually use the proper paperwork, or did they just send you a text going, right, love, rent's going up by 10% in a couple of weeks? And everyone should remember this, right? A lot of people don't remember this. I experienced a landlord who tried to put my rent up, and I just went, no. So no. Unless you agree to leave it where it is, I'm going to dispute it, and I'm not going to pay it until it's agreed again. And he went, oh, right then, and left it where it was. Because I knew that what he was asking, I knew he was just flying a kite, assuming I would just pay it. And a lot of landlords do that, because a lot of tenants do just do it. A lot of tenants live in fear, going, oh my God, we've got to just pay our rent. We've got to pay our rent or we'll kick us out. Not true. You've already, even before the Renters' Rights Bill comes in, you've got so many rights that allow you to dig your heels in if your landlord's being unfair and go, no. You know, a landlord can slap you with a Section 21 notice and go, get out in 2 months. And you can go, no, not going to. And some landlords, well, what do you mean? You have to. No, you don't have to. All a Section 21 notice does is begin the legal process that eventually leads to eviction. That's all it does. It doesn't mean you have to be out. It's a notice requiring you to leave in 2 months. But if you don't, nothing happens. It then opens up other options for the landlord. He then has to apply for, go back to court and apply for an eviction order. And that kind of stuff. So eviction notice, then eviction order. It takes ages. Anyway, but my point is, under the current system, if tenants actually knew their rights and knew the system better, a lot of these bully landlords wouldn't get away with the shit they get away with. The professional landlords that do it properly and considerately and give you lots of advance notice and discuss and agree and arrange a fair rent, that's how to do it. These last minute landlords that just sort of slap you with things with no notice. Oh, you got to get out, or oh, I'm going to put your rent up with short notice. They're terrible landlords. Sorry, if you're watching on this, you're a terrible landlord if you don't give your tenant as much notice as possible, because you're derailing their life. And I'm sure Victoria might have answered some more to that. What's happened? Have you? Oh, yeah, yes, you have. Definitely not allowed, Charlie. No WhatsApp. I've written an excellent letter. They have several properties. They know. Fully shite. I'm not afraid. Oh, if I get a Section 21, it's going to be fun. Yeah, you see, landlords don't want hassle. They don't want legal costs. They don't want to have to go to court. They will negotiate if you are reasonable. And sometimes you can have an awkward and uncomfortable negotiation, but you get past it and everything's better and everything's fine for a lot longer after that. Ditchhead. Maybe there'll be a crash. I think you mean in 2026, don't you? But surely not repossession. Stress testing has been a lot more stringent, not like 90s or mid 2000s onwards. I don't think there will be. I mean, there will. Repossessions are happening now and they're rising. They're not spiking in volumes, but they're rising at an uncomfortable pace. Let's put it that way. Roughly, I think around about 500 people a month having their homes repossessed at the moment. Private mortgage holders, not landlords. That's a separate one. But there's still a relatively low number. I mean, 500 people is a lot of people to have their house repossessed, right? I do think it's going to get worse next year. We still haven't seen the end of all the fixed rates coming, people coming off the end of their fixed rates yet. We still haven't seen the worst of unemployment. There's a lot of things going to happen. They've put in place that 12 months of forbearance, didn't they, with the lenders? And there hasn't been a sudden shock that's caused this yet. So that's caused a lot of sellers to default on their mortgages. But sadly, I do expect to see repossessions continue to rise into next year. But I don't think there's going to be an actual. I think it's going to be a steep slide, but not a crash. I think a lot of the changes they made to financial products and the regulations were put in place to prevent sudden crashes. However, if there is a credit crunch, like in 2008, if the banks cannot access the funds to lend you, because no, it doesn't come out of thin air. Fractional reserve lending, different thing. Mortgages, banks don't just conjure it up for you like that, right? It's not that straightforward. If there is a liquidity event, that could trigger a house price crash, if there is one. Will there be one? Who knows? What else do we have? Any more questions here? Okay, there's a good question. Pro Gamer J. Cookie Monster, yes, I think 2026 will be carnage. Oh, Tristan, I'm sorry to read that. I'll come back to your comment in a minute. Nick Jones, you do ask me some funny questions. Yeah, Patricia, stress testing was the banks protecting themselves. I agree. They're protecting themselves from the effects of a crash, but I think that's why we'll see fewer repossessions this time around. Right. How do you work out your maximum comfortable offer in current market conditions if you want to live there for 5 to 7 years? One person's maximum comfortable amount for the same property as another person bidding on it will be different. Okay? Your maximum comfortable offer on a given property will be arrived at and calculated with a long list of considerations that are unique to you and your circumstances and that property. So there's no exact science to this, right? It depends on how much your mortgage is, how much your deposit is, how long you're planning to stay there, whether you care about negative equity, whether it's your first home or your second home. I'm assuming it's your first one. You're saying live there 5 to 7 years. Okay, so that means you're expected to sell in 5 years. So that elevates the risk of being trapped by negative equity. I'm assuming you're using a mortgage, but I don't know. If it's cash, that changes it again. I don't know if you're living on your own or whether it's a family, whether you've got schools taken into consideration. I don't know whether commuting is a consideration. All of these things affect it because, if you are a commuter, You might have £4,000 a year to pay on commuter fees, and another buyer might not. So your maximum comfortable price might be different. It's the price. This is a bit of a woo-woo answer, okay? It's the price at which, if you imagine getting the phone call to say your offer has been accepted, you will feel excited, thrilled, and can't wait to get in and totally comfortable with the price you've paid. As opposed to what often happens when people pay more than their maximum comfortable price, they get told the news, congratulations, your offer's been accepted, and they get a sinking feeling, instant buyer's remorse. Ooh. And you're so committed to it that you kind of go through with it anyway, and then you kind of reluctantly send the conveyancer some money, and you reluctantly go through the mortgage paperwork, and inside it's going, oh God, it's sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. If you get that feeling with a certain amount, then that's you overpaying. All right. I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer than that, but you've got to know what amount you're comfortable with or not comfortable with. You'll know you haven't offered enough if someone else pays £1,000 more than you and gets it, and you kick yourself and go, God, I would have paid that and still been happy. Well, then you should have paid that first time out. Okay. The most common mistake is people not offering enough. That's the most common mistake. But then, of course, there are lots of other people who make the other mistake, and they do offer way too much and live to regret it. Tristan Hargroves, I am being evicted and I will wait for bailiffs. As is your right. And in fact, if you are someone who might need council help to be housed after that, then you must wait until you're evicted by bailiffs, or the council will consider you to be intentionally homeless. Okay, so you must wait. If you want council help, you must wait. But in any case, you are entitled to stay there until the eviction date, whether you pay your rent or not. Now, if you don't pay your rent, the landlord can still pursue you for it if they want to. Some will, some won't. But you are entitled to stay in that property until the date you're evicted, whether you're paying rent or not. But you will still be liable to pay the rent afterwards. But that's just an FYI. What I know some people do is they know that because they're being evicted and they've had a fallout with a landlord, they're going to find it harder to rent somewhere else. So they stop paying rent and they save it so that they can go and pay 6 months up front on the next place. It happens. I'm not recommending it. I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm just saying it happens. But I'm sorry to hear you being evicted, Tristan. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Coming up on the hour. Any last minute great questions? Michelle asks, hi, Charlie, if there is a banking crisis, do you trust that the FSCS will definitely protect any savings up to £25,000? Cool. It's a tough question. I mean, for your savings to be at risk, two things would have to happen. A very big bank would have to go under, and the government would then have to default on that. And yeah, I mean, if we can't trust them to protect our savings, I think we all as a country have bigger problems. That's what I think. Guys, I've got to go. I've got to wrap it up. Listen, thanks a lot. Please remember to join my mailing list if you want 5 Fact Friday email. There quite a lot of you get the email, like 1,500 of you get the email at the moment. And you can reply and give me feedback. And I never get any feedback. I never get. It's not that I'm asking for more email. I get too much email already, but I do these kind of my thought of the week, which is my last week. It was a bit of a drunken thing. And I've got no idea whether you guys like it or not. But if you want to get it, join the mailing list, mhwc.co.uk newsletter. But if you're new here, please check the links below to watch the 10 golden rules for buyers, 10 golden rules for sellers. Make sure you watch those videos if you're buying or selling. I had a fantastic piece of news from Dennis Haggerty this morning. But I've got to go because I come up in the hour. I've got to call it.